You're listening to The Bounding Box, where we talk about web development, geo development, and everything in between.
All right, welcome to the Bounding Box. Today I'm joined by a great guest here. I've got Courtney. Courtney, please tell us who you are, what you do, what's your problem?
Hi, thank you, Renee. I'm so excited to be on here. My name is Courtney Yatteau. I've been a developer advocate at Esri for just under a year and a half now. So I'm a part of the developer experience team, and our team is in charge of the developers website, developers.arcgis.com, the general and open source documentation on there, and really just like overall developer satisfaction with our technology. So it's fun. My role as a developer advocate, it kind of sits at the intersection of like developers engineering, marketing, and then community engagement, a little bit of social media, kind of like all of that stuff. So I feel like I'm wearing, a lot of hats when I'm doing my role. So, doing things like, just connecting with developers and in many different ways. Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a great role that you've got going there. I mean, the experience team does a lot. They're really out there um, creating information and tutorials and just helping users out and stuff in the community and stuff like that. And you're right. I mean, it is a lot of, not just presenting the information, you're creating it, right? I mean, you're creating these tutorials, videos, stuff like that, doing sessions and stuff. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. And you've had a really exciting first year when you started Esri. I mean, you did a Dev Summit plenary, correct?
Yeah, I actually, right. So I did the first one that I did was on a smaller scale. So I had like a little bit of, a work up to. So I went into Dev Summit Europe, in Berlin. And so I did the little plenary there, So that was, I don't know, maybe like 500, 600 people, But then, I worked my way up to then doing the Dev Summit plenary in Palm Springs, which, was quite a bit more. If you add all the people virtually too, I don't even want to know how many people, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a thrilling experience. It's definitely nerve-wracking, but you kind of have this invigorating like just fire behind you once you're partway through, you're like, okay, I got this. Keep going. Don't mess up, but keep going. And then you're done. You're like, yes.
Yeah, it's
But
really fun.
yeah.
I've done them before, and it's like it's weird. You go up there and you do your 5 minutes or whatever it is, or maybe 10, and I mean
Yeah.
there are hours and hours behind that like little 10 minutes or whatever that you do, right? And all that build
Yeah.
up and like you said, the excitement and anxiety you got going up there and everything. But once it's done and like you're up there doing it, it's great. It's a really good feeling and stuff to get it all done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think people realize there's not, any kind of like script that you're reading off of or
Oh yeah,
anything. You got it all memorized, right? So
there's no
it's
prompters or
it's
anything like
fun.
that. You've got
No.
slides to work off of, maybe that you're looking
Hmm.
at. And even then, you're spending more time looking at the audience and you're looking at your actual slides most of the time, right? So
Yeah.
you've done a lot of
Yeah.
YouTube videos too. You've done a lot of shorts and stuff like that. I've seen that you've put out there.
Hmm.
Things on using the platform to do a lot of different things. You do a really good job of
Hmm.
explaining how to use the platform and get the most out of it and stuff. I mean, what's your background
Hmm.
that you're able to do stuff like that?
Hmm. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, I've been at Esri for a year and a half. So before that, I did have a 10-year completely different career. So I've always had a love for math. I used to be a high school math and computer science teacher. And I did that for 10 years, like I said. And, after honestly starting in around 2019, I just started to begin feeling kind of worn down, just by all of the things like the early mornings of getting up and getting into the classroom and doing before school tutoring, but then also, making sure my room's ready after school tutoring, dealing with parents, grading, lesson planning, like late nights, it was just a lot. So as much as I love teaching, it just took a toll on me, So um, in the I have a math background, but in the computer science realm, that that really kind of was more self-taught. I was actually thrown my first computer science course to teach my second year of teaching, and I just embraced it. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna try this out, because I did a little, like a tiny bit of programming in college with MATLAB and a couple of my math courses. And
Okay.
I remember kind of dreading it a bit because they didn't teach us anything. They just kind of threw it at us. But I was like, okay, I've got this. I will try. So I actually taught very basic programming, like actual TI basic on
Wow. Okay.
calculators for a bit. That was fun. And I transitioned into teaching like Java, AP computer science. Yeah. So, I mean, once 2020 hit, and schools were let out, and then we were on like a, shortened like schedule, virtual, all of that. I had a lot more time in my hands, like everyone else, right? I mean, yeah. So I just decided to explore computer science a bit more. I signed up for an intro, like online web development course that got me started with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Yeah, and I from there, I mean, I did teach for another like couple of years, but I was definitely building up a portfolio of projects and kind of gaining my confidence and figuring out, how I was going to make that career transition, and really where I wanted to fit in tech. So to be honest, I mean, my teaching background, once I found the role of developer like relations, I was excited. I started applying to those kind of roles because at first I was just doing, junior software engineer, whatever, and it just didn't feel right. I did a few interviews and I was like, I don't want to be behind a desk just working on production code all day. I don't know. It just didn't feel right.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm excited to now be able to, still teach in some ways, do content creation, get to interact with developers about our technology. Not having obviously any GIS background, that's something that's coming on the job. So that's been fun,
That's
right?
interesting. Yeah, right. I mean, you did come in
Mhm.
with a great like teaching background and stuff like that, and like you said, you've got the chops for the engineering part and stuff like that. But the GIS is something different, right? But
Mhm.
I mean, I guess you could say the approach that you have to teach people something, regardless of what it is, right? It's just kind of something you
Yeah.
have a knack for.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, uh, there's definitely a teaching style of pedagogy that I've developed over the years, of teaching high schoolers, and a lot of that can translate to adults too,
I'm sure
and
it
just
does.
yeah, right. Yeah, I mean the techniques of, just the incentivizations of, whatever you're doing to try to make people engaged and understand the content, and yeah, it's fun. I've seen a lot of the overlap, and I'm continuing to, try to translate my skills in that way.
Now, I
Yeah.
do remember I was one of your interviewers when you interviewed at Esri. I remember
Hmm.
Raul put me on that interview team, and you had prepared like a small presentation teaching someone how to use, I believe it's on how to use the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. Is that right? How to build a
Hmm.
map, right? How to get the
Yeah.
basic steps in there, stuff like that. And it was pretty impressive. I mean, for someone that didn't have a background in mapping per se, and it was impressive too because you're interviewing at a company that does mapping, so you did your research ahead of time, and you prepared a
Hmm.
small little walkthrough presentation how to do it, which was great. And that really was impressive to see that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was, I will say, I mean, I definitely researched, like you said. I found YouTube videos. I found one of your guys' live streams. It may have been one of the first ones you guys did. Yeah, to kind of help, So some videos, I think, from, I don't know if it was from a past F Summit or something, but I know it was more of an introductory one. So I took a lot of notes kind of from things that like, you and like Julie and other people on your team were saying about, just how to use the API SDK. And yeah, translated into a presentation of, trying to, everything that I gathered out of it. Yeah, it's one thing I've definitely always tried to incorporate in any kind of, I guess, tutorial or presentation like thing is if I have time, are any of the potential like mistakes that you could make, so just things to look out for, and that kind of thing. So I know that like Raul and John, who interviewed me initially, were both very, impressed with kind of that too. Like, okay, you're not only showing how to do something, but also potential pitfalls or things that mistakes that people might make too. So,
And
yeah.
they're really useful. You'll see it a lot, even if you look at like the Esri community stuff that they're on the website that people can post questions on. They hit these like little mistakes and stuff here and there, and it's not difficult to get past. But there's these little things that if you've never hit them before, you're like, I have no idea where to go from here, right? So to see
Hmm.
that kind of information up front, I mean, it sticks in the back of your head when you're working on something. Like, okay, I've seen this before, and I know there's something to work around it, right? You may not remember exactly what it is, but at least it gets you on the right path to something, which is really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And anytime I'm learning something new, which has been this pretty much entire role, is I always make a note of it. I'm like, okay, could I turn this into a blog or a tutorial or something, and add on any mistakes that I made along the way too, like all the learning points. I did a lot of that when I was teaching too, since there was so much that I was learning in terms of the computer science stuff while I was teaching it too. So yeah, it's just another way that I've kind of translated
Has
that.
most of the stuff you've been doing been JavaScript based, or have you touched on any of the Python stuff or any of the other APIs as well?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It really has been just the JavaScript stuff. So I've played around with the JavaScript SDK. I've done definitely a lot of more of our open source integrations and using our REST APIs directly. But yeah, I do plan to try to dive into our Python API. And so some of the other things, I did play around a little bit with some of our native SDKs. I think I was using Java the other day because I have a little bit of Java background. But yeah, I need to try more of it. It's just there's just so much,
Exactly, it's true. I
a
always want to
huge
mess
list of
with the
things.
the Android stuff using Kotlin, or I had
Yeah.
interviewed someone last year on the Games SDK, right? Rex Henson,
Mm,
and
yes.
really want to mess with that, but then I have to get my Windows stuff set up, and I don't use Windows, so I have to get that going and everything. So that would be
Mhm.
really fun to try too.
Yeah, actually, you just reminded me when I was interviewing, I remembered I was trying to just expose myself to all ArcGIS things, and Unity and Unreal were I guess, pretty new at that point, and I had used Unity a little bit before just for fun. I hadn't actually created anything, just trying it out. And yeah, so I played around with our SDK for that last year, I guess it was, yeah, early last year, a bit, and yeah, it was cool. Definitely something that I have no expertise in, but I would love to play with that more as well. Yeah.
Yeah, on the platform
Um,
side, I think the use of API keys across the board now is really interesting. And I know people
mhm.
use them a lot, client side up front and stuff like that. But I think the real power for that is probably like on the back end side, where people can do different things with them, the location services, nearest facility type stuff, or closest facility, whatever they're using, and processing stuff in the back end, right? And then serving that out somehow.
Mm,
I think that's really where a lot of the cool stuff
yeah.
could be done with the API keys.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, for sure. I think there's a whole realm of possibilities there for sure. Yeah.
And it's kind of neat because like you can integrate everything with like Leaflet, using Esri Leaflet as bringing our
Hmm.
base maps and all that stuff. Then we have the whole Map Libre stuff. You can bring in the geocoding and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I mean, it's really just open to wherever you need it, or however much complexity your particular application needs. There's something that you could use it for, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting to, the more that I've talked to developers that whether they're aware of our technology or not, they they don't know that we have really any of that open source integration option. So I mean, if you people that hear of Esri don't think open source.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, I presented at Phos4G NA back in October with one of my colleagues, George, on my team, and we both, were having a bit of questions and backlash of like, what? Like, this is kind of confusing. But, once we, talked about, it really was more focused on just the performance across the 3 open source
Yeah.
libraries, but we, use some ArcGIS hosted data to do that performance testing. So, kind of using it stealthily, kind of. But anyways, for the most part, that it was good. People really embraced it, and a lot of people were excited to hear that, we actually do offer those kinds of integrations. Yeah.
Very cool. It's always nice to hear back feedback, even from people that aren't necessarily our direct users or customers, but just what they think about using stuff like that, right? That they can integrate at some point down the road. What their feedback is on it. It's really cool to hear that back.
Yeah, for sure.
So I talked a little bit about the it's called Esri Community. It used to be called GeoNet, and before that it was the ArcGIS forums or Esri forums. Now it's called the Esri Community, the website. And in general, that's kind of like where people could go with basic questions like that. But there's an entire like geodev community out there that encompasses more than just like Esri stuff, but people are aware of it and everything like that too. I mean, how can people really engage with that community? Are there any like suggestions you have or something like that if people are interested in talking to others that are doing that? Because I know that, for example, there's a lot of people that probably work in local agencies that are kind of isolated from the larger community, right? But they really just want to communicate with others who are doing the same kind of work they do. So what do you suggest that people like that do to engage?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I'll briefly talk about Esri Community and just that, it is a great space for people who are aware and are very active with using our technology. But, if you're not, if you are just like a general geo developer, yeah, I mean, there's so many other forums and communities out there. I mean, I've seen several good postings on like Stack Exchange, like the GIS section. There's a Reddit GIS like community as well. And Discord, I've seen some good like geospatial group on there. I don't spend a lot of time in those channels, but I definitely know those do exist. And I think that's one of my goals for this year is to try to just be more out there and interact with more geo developers in general. Another good option I would say is try to contribute to open source. So whether it's on GitHub or GitLab, if you can find so many open source GIS projects, and it's a really good way to like engage with others as well, and contribute to potentially real world projects and get feedback too.
Awesome.
Yeah. So several other ways. I mean, conferences, meetups, like webinars, live streams, like all sorts of things. So yeah.
Are you set to be presenting at Dev Summit in March this year?
Yeah, I'll be there. Actually, so I'll be at Dev Summit in Palm Springs. And then I'm actually before that going to do the Developer Summit portion at Fed GIS
Fed, okay.
because that's really close to me here. So
that's going to be cold.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't say it up top, but my problem is that I'm already sick of the snow, and it's only snowed once this season here. And as a former teacher, I used to love it because we'd get snow days, and now I'm like, ugh, great.
I've done Fed a few times, and I just stopped because it's too cold. Like the last time I went, I didn't listen to someone. I didn't take a scarf or anything. I had a regular jacket. My hotel was just like a block away from I was freezing. My neck was so cold. I was dying. No matter, I had like a sweater and a jacket, and it wasn't snowing. It had just snowed. So there was snow on the ground, but I was like, you know what? I'm from California. I can't do this. I'm sorry. So I just went and drank myself warm after that. But
yeah, I mean that's one way to get a blanket. But yeah, it's cold, but the conference center itself is really nice. The Walter E. Convention Center.
It is really nice. You get to meet. You get a whole different crowd there. That you get to meet everybody from because DC, right? So you get all the federal employees. You get all these really different questions like that. It's really cool. I really enjoy it, and I do miss seeing a lot of the people, the regulars from Fed, out there and stuff like that don't get to go to Palm Springs, right? So that I kind of miss out on. But yeah. I don't miss that
Yeah,
kid.
for sure. No, I understand. Which I mean, then I'm excited for Palm Springs, which is likely to be much warmer, hopefully. I mean,
Cross the fingers, right?
yeah, right. I know I was there, like we said, I was there last year, and people were saying it was a little cooler then because I think it was more in
Yeah.
the high 60s or something. But
It was more like sweater
yeah,
weather last year.
yeah, yeah, which is still a lot better than, most anywhere halfway up the East Coast or, during that time. So yeah, it should be fun. I'm going to be
Awesome.
doing a few demo theaters and one talk as well. And then
Okay.
don't know about plenary yet. We'll see. But yeah.
Very cool. All right, Courtney, well, I
Yeah.
want to respect your time, but before I let you go, do you have any tips or tricks for listeners out there? It doesn't have to be geodev related at all or anything like that. Anything you want to throw out there.
Yeah. So I will say if you feel stuck or if you feel, say, unhappy in whether it's in your career or in life in general, don't just be complacent. I had to kind of teach myself that when I was going through my transition, my career transition. So I used to, feel bad that I wanted to leave teaching, but there's honestly there's a reason for the way that you're feeling, if you're feeling something like that. So take it as a sign and a motivation to make a change. Sometimes it's really okay to be selfish. Honestly, everyone will likely be better off for it because it's really hard to help others if you can't help yourself. So,
That's
yeah.
awesome advice, Courtney. Appreciate that. Well, thank you very much, and I'll see you next
All
time.
right, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Bounding Box today. Please subscribe for more content.